I thank you so much, Miss Hobson, for making up those stories. Mr. Master of Ceremonies, the clergy, the Honorable Denzel Douglas, Prime Minister St. Kitts Nevis, along with his associates and members of his cabinet, the Honorable Premier Joseph Walker Parry and his family, members of his cabinet, the Honorable Deputy Governor General, Mr. Eustace John, Mrs. John, members of the NRP party, the women's arm of the Nevis Reformation Party, other distinguished guests, friends, and, oh yes, my rock, 40 years, my wife, Ailita. I cannot begin to tell you how thrilled I am and the unexplainable joy I feel having been asked to bring remarks attributable to my childhood friend and family, the honorable and distinguished gentleman, Premier of this beautiful country, Joseph Walker Parry. I am humbled and I'm honored to do so without hesitation or equivocation. Given the fact that wherever Kittitians and Nevisians are, Roosevelt David wants to be. I would ask your indulgence, however, to digress for a moment or two to first of all recognize some wonderful people who traveled from the Virgin Islands with me specifically for this grand occasion. And then I'd like to make a stop at the roasting table and roast my good friend in a moment of humor. But let me first of all recognize my good friend over here, former bank of 25 years, Mr. Percival E. Clouden, and guest. Percy is currently the CEO of the USVI Economic Development Authority, with 5 agencies under his purview, to include the Government Development Bank and the Enterprise Zone. Prominent bank, I said, for 25 years. I'd like to recognize my good friend here, Victor Sidney, and his beautiful wife, Simra. They are the owners of world-renowned Victor's Hideout restaurant. And whenever the Prime Minister or the Premier go to St. Thomas, that's where they dine. And his beautiful wife, Simra, is an executive at the Port Authority on St. Thomas. I have my childhood friend, Livingston Sargent, his beautiful wife, Millie. You know, we've been friends for 6 decades. 6 decades. Oh, we don't look that old, are we? I don't think so. And you know that Saga, as I call him, was one of the most outstanding batsmen in these parts. He and his wife are former bankers as well. And as you know, Millie was a netball star. Were you, Millie? Absolutely. I have my good friend here, Llewellyn O. Powell, and his guest, a businessman in the hospitality industry. Trevor French, I'm sure he's there. Good friend and banker, a banker of the highest caliber, the Bank of Nevis out of Miami. I have my political advisor here, Mr. Earl Sargent. And I traveled with my pastor. Of course, she is my spiritual leader, Pastor Merle Agnola Martin. Of course, I did say I traveled with my rock. Now, if I may take a couple of moments to roast my very good friend here. You know, we played cricket in the road, dirt road. And that area in Cotton Ground was basically one of our recreational centers. We did everything there. We speed ran, we jumped, everything. And Walcott ran so fast that he earned the name Cutter. Up until this very day, we call him Cutter, how fast he was. And you know, I always remember this. When we did our high school exam, entrance to high school, we walked from Cotton Ground to Charlestown. And when we reached at the bottom of the road to go up to the high school there was this guy riding a bicycle crazily. I think his name was Parry too, you know. And he knocked Walcott completely down. And no sooner than he was down, he was up. And he said, a bad beginning makes a good ending. And he was right, because he aced the exam in flying colors. I could recall early in our years in high school, he wore a white shirt that day instead of a blue shirt. And I remember the principal saying to him, Parry, where's the blue shirt? And he said, Mr. It mash up. I thought it was Rollins out of Barbados. He said, you mean it's like a piece of stick, it could break? And now, you know, in those days, we played politics. We were politicians. And Walcott, Orlando Sargent, who is Earl's older brother, and I were supporters of Eugene Walwyn. And our good friend here, Livingston, he was a supporter of Ivor Stevens. And when it came to parties, we were anti-labor for whatever reason. We didn't know at that time that Robert Llewellyn Bratcher was way ahead of his time. So when we heard about labor, we had a problem with labor. Thank God we learn better now. But all this time that we will take pot shots, Walcott would, I would have, Orlando did, Saga, he won't say a word. You know, we found out in later years, he was a big labor man all those time. And the connection was, I call him labor too sometimes. When I call home for him, I say, is labor there? And so, the connection was that his sister Gladys was married to Paul Southwell. So how couldn't we have known that the man was a labor all the way? But I'd like to take the opportunity to also recognize my good friend, the Honorable Elridge Sinclair Tobias, MBE. MBE, the most excellent order of the British Empire. Welcome. And so this evening, the women's arm of the Nevis Reformation Party is most gracious in extending this invitation to me. But more importantly, is the decision to pay homage to a man who is modest a man who seeks no special recognition and whose humility presented difficulty in him accepting this honor, which he so greatly deserves. J.W. Parry has never lost the common touch of the grassroots, but has the profound capability of communicating with kings and queens, and could even soar with eagles, but his comfort zone lies in serving his people with passion and compassion. This he does with admirable distinction, even in the face of economic difficulty. A trained economist he is. You see, Walcott, as I affectionately call him, has prepared himself well from an early age. He excelled in elementary school at Lowland, as you all know. He excelled at high school, CSS, and did no less at the St. Kitts Nevis Grammar School, and then earned his economics degree from the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill, Barbados. This country could not have chosen a more appropriate and competent leader particularly during this global crisis and this financial meltdown and the near collapse of most of the world's financial markets. The ripple effect that trickled down to these islands has had a devastating impact. But the captain of your ship held a steady course, and through his ingenuity and the support of his cabinet members and advisors, he kept the ship afloat and averted catastrophe on his people. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no substitute for decisive and creative leadership. Nevisians are eternally blessed that a Moses has risen up in your midst. And why do I say that? Well, the global economic crisis has claimed the jobs of millions of individuals across the globe. Doctors lost their jobs, nurses, police officers, teachers, private sector employees also fell victims. And closer to home in the Caribbean, some 500,000 jobs were on the line in Cuba. In Puerto Rico, 30,000 government employees lost their jobs, and many other Caribbean islands experienced similar fate. On the U.S. mainland, 8 million people lost their jobs. 8 million people lost their jobs. Did this happen in Nevis? The answer is a resounding no. There are similarities with the U.S. Virgin Islands and Nevis. People did not lose their jobs in large numbers due to the fact that visionary leaders are at the helm. This very resort, the Four Seasons Hotel, was embroiled in complex and complicated financial and legal wranglings, which created uncertainty of its reopening. I want you to know that this premier, your premier, cleverly and prudently helped to mitigate the situation, and tonight we're here. We're here. You see, J.W. Parry understands that when investments are embraced, jobs are created, money circulates, and the treasury benefits so that the delivery of public services can be paid for. You have a leader who is forward-thinking and wants to make sure that his people prosper. A good leader invests in his people. No investment in a people that satisfies their needs could have any quantifying value, no matter how huge, that is not worth the while. I reference the drag strip built here in Nevis through creative ways, particularly for our young people who have a stake in this. There are those who would criticize for no obvious reason but jealousy. And probably would like to see this country in a primitive stage. So in the event that Christopher Columbus returns, he could immediately recognize and identify those things he left behind. No change. No progress. Well, J.W. Parry is a 21st century leader who continues to augment the beauty of this Caribbean gem by smart development and infrastructure improvements. I marvel, and I'm impressed that Nevis has its own state-of-the-art drag strip, while some other Caribbean countries with larger budgets, they have not moved yet to this level, to this stage. They don't have this facility. The support and facilitation of the seabridge operation is one of genius. And mark you, the idea has been around for decades, but inaction, procrastination, indecisiveness, lack of vision, and even downright deterrence and vindictive pushbacks prevented the implementation of such an important economic activity and service, which should have been effectuated a long time ago. Trade and commerce, relationships, job creation and enhancements have all been tremendously improved, and a necessary void has been filled. And I'd like to take a moment to recognize my good friend Rollins and Isaac. Would you kindly stand? The brilliance in J.W. Parry created the atmosphere and provided the avenue for upward mobility and prosperity. I am reminded of the late, great Booker T. Washington, who was born into slavery and rose to national prominence. He once said, and I quote, "I have learned that success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life, as by the obstacles which one has overcome while trying to succeed," unquote. He also said, and I quote, "You can't hold a man down without staying down with him," unquote. The positive attributes embedded in J.W. Parry, keeping moving forward and upward ever, and backward never. Remember that? The Cherry Gardens development and dedication is an enormous commitment and fulfillment of a fundamental need for our people. And I want our premier to stand and be recognized and take a bow. And now I'm going to ask you wonderful audience to please stand and give him a bow. He deserves it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Unprecedented large numbers of students are given financial assistance in providing them with free textbooks. That's right. That's important. This is a leader who believes education is first and everything else will fall in place. Recognizing the huge cost of electricity, this leader has wisely embraced alternative energy in wind power and geothermal energy so as to bring relief to his people. Significant improvements are continually being made to roads, and recreation centers are being multiplied. The quality of life in Little Nevis continues to be so rapidly improved, there is no need to go back to the days of Columbus. I'd like to also at this point thank the Premier for having taken the initiative for naming special areas in Cotton Ground for Livingston Sargent, our great cricketer, for Eustace Tessie Nisbet, deceased, and Derek Parry, and also for renaming Grove Park after El Camino Willett. Give him a round of applause, please. Just very recently, Governor John DeYoung Jr. of the Virgin Islands won re-election in a convincing and decisive way by crystallizing his many accomplishments. And so you don't need to reinvent the wheels. People can see. People are working. And people can put food on the table. Proven leadership is evident. You know what you have. You don't know what you will get. Well, my wife Ailita, requested that I leave the politics out of this. But you know, I think that is synonymous to asking a duck not to go into the pond where I learned to swim. But I expect to be attacked and wrongly accused, but that is commonplace in my life. I expect this. I can recall that I came to Nevis during the early 1990s along with my good friend Livingston, and good friends and old friends got together and drove around with J.W. Parry. I was accused of bringing to Nevis a suitcase of money to influence the election on behalf of Parry. Well, while there was no truth to that, the right man won the election anyway. The next accusation came after the secession move was defeated. I orchestrated a plan with Parry, I was told, and screwed up Nevis because we aborted their plan. While that too was false, the right decision was made. So I don't have any problem being on the right side. The relationship that has been fostered by the Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas and the Honorable J.W. Parry has created an indomitable team that is on its way to building a legacy of exponential magnitude. And I'd like to repeat that. I'd like to repeat that. The relationship that has been fostered by the Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas and the Honorable J.W. Parry has created an indomitable team that is on its way to building a legacy of exponential magnitude. This nation will never be the same again. Very, very high standards to match. Mr. Prime Minister, I want to personally thank you. Because every year at Christmas time, you send me a Christmas card. And I believe that that is so thoughtful. I really want to personally thank you. Thank you, thank you so very much. I always say, and I truly believe it, that besides the power of God, There is no power greater than that, than the power of politics. And that politics and economics go hand in hand. They're inextricably bound. Let me repeat that. There is no power greater than that beside the power of God than politics. And that politics and economics go hand in hand. They are inextricably bound. And you know, elections are constitutionally due in Nevis later this year. And I urge each and every one of you to be a part of this important process. While my good friend is doing a fantastic job, I understand that there is going to be some futile attempt to unseat him. You know, I think it is short-sighted for an animal, any animal for that matter, that brays, to run against an experienced thoroughbred in a horse race. It makes no sense. And while it makes no sense, though, I'm reminded of the old saying that wise men think alike, while fools seldom differ. Generally, elections are won in advance. And on election day, the process is formalized when you go to the polls. While the Nevis electorate is very intelligent, you must not take anything to chance. First, the question is asked, are we better off today than when NRP took the reins of government? Unequivocally, the honest answer must be absolutely yes. Do you want to change this? Or do you want to continue to progress? I don't think that you want to regress. You want to continue to go forward and upward. And I want you to know that I feel very proud when people visit Nevis and come back to the Virgin Islands and say to me, your country is so advanced, I would like to live there. This did not just evolve. It has taken vision, planning, execution, and hard work. J.W. Parry is a leader extraordinaire and deserves to govern another term. Ladies and gentlemen, Walcott cannot do it alone. He must have a team to work with. It would be counterproductive for him to convincingly win his seat but loses a member of his cabinet. He must gain seats. So you must come to grips with reality. Selfish interests and ulterior motives could only hurt, not help. The welfare of the country should be of utmost priority. Then all will benefit, not just a selected few. My charge to you this evening, then, is that you take your responsibility seriously and traverse every hill and every valley, every neighborhood in this country and every village and town, every beach and playground, and the powerful church must not be left out. Spread the word far and near. Re-emphasize the tremendous accomplishments of this administration under the dynamic leadership of J.W. Parry. I want to remind you, though, that politics is about people. Politics is about repetition, lest people forget. There is a tendency to take things for granted. So every opportunity must be used to refresh people's minds. And every action must become a household issue in a positive light. Finally, my good people, accept the fact that government can't be all things to all people. While elected leaders have the responsibility to pass legislation for the effective operation of government and for the coexistence of the private sector, government also has the divine responsibility to assist people, and locals I'm talking about, in getting into their own businesses. But you as a people, you must create your own opportunity and grasp those that avail themselves. Don't sit back and wait for someone to do it for you. You have the ability to create your own wealth. If others or non-nationals could do it, you can do it better. But you must apply yourself affirmatively and confidently. It has been an honor for me to speak on behalf of a powerful leader and friend, and to highlight a few of J.W. Parry's many accomplishments and achievements. And I am so delighted that the women's arm of the Nevis Reformation Party graced me with an invitation to be the keynote speaker. There is much more work to be done to catapult Nevis to its maximum potential. You have been an awesomely fantastic group of people here this evening. And you're called to action as intelligent voters to work untiringly to keep J.W. Parry and his team in power. Just let me remind you that a solid foundation has been laid. The vehicle has been provided. The atmosphere has been created. Your future and continued success are clearly in your hands. For the miracle man, let's sing with one song. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe that deserves a standing ovation. A powerful message from a man who has been there, done that. Senator Roosevelt David.